Obviously, we didn't have infrastructure. We were using any data we could get to send letters out introducing this new card. When you look at that time, Nigeria didn't have the history of issuing cards. We started that policy of if you were going to withdraw 40,000 and below, you must use the ATM. It wasn't easy. The fact that we didn't allow lack of infrastructure to prevent us from moving forward. The most successful thing that I would say I've ever been part of is the issuance.
Welcome to Made in Payments. Today we're going to be speaking to an amazing woman, someone who I respect so much, not only because she was my boss when I knew absolutely nothing, but she is one of the pioneers of payments as we know it in Nigeria. And I think she's also created a lot of evolution that Africa uses today. We're going to hear her story. I'm going to let her tell her story. And the parts that she forgets, I will try to remind her. But it's important we hear from her because there were a lot of firsts that she did. When we look at value card, even before we started the likes of Mastercard, Visa as we know it today, when we look at even the first Mastercard that was used abroad for international cards, when we look at the PIN pads that we use in the banks today to change our PIN, a lot of it was spearheaded by this wonderful woman here. And so without further, speaking, we're going to hear her talk and hear her story and get some nice history lesson from here. So thank you very much, Ronke, for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. And thank you for your willingness to share with us today. I know, like I was saying, it's important we hear you tell these stories because we and the people coming after us, I don't think we do a good job in Nigeria keeping history. And so this is important because it helps as a guide to let people know what was there before, how we can learn from the past and how we can be better. So thank you so much. So I'm going to dive right in and I'll ask you. So before Naira Mastercard, before Mastercard as we know it, Visa as we know it, Verb, there was value card.
Yes.
I never used value cards. And I don't think a lot of people that are watching us even know what value card was. So how did cards even come into Nigeria? Because I know you were part of that. So let's start from there.
I mean, I possibly may not be in a position to tell you how cards came into Nigeria because I remember a bank called SGBN.
Okay.
I think they had
So
some
Society
ATMs
General.
at the time. They had ATMs, whether it was successful or not, that's a different story. But when we decided around about 2001, I think about 2001, and that it was important for us to have to move away from cash and to start using some form of card payment as we see them abroad. And so we started with Value Card. Some banks there was a company called Value Card, set up by a few banks, and they actually invested in it. Value Card, the card we were using is not actually Value Card. It's actually Value Card, which is VALU card. So Value Card. So it was an electronic purse. So we didn't have online payment as such. We didn't have infrastructure. So what we needed to do was to just have an electronic purse, which is a card. And then you just load your money, obviously pay money in the bank, and they will load it on that card. The card will have an account, an electronic purse. And then you would go and spend in shops and various places. To an extent, we were successful. We got the cards issued out. However, it wasn't easy to have electronic purse without the infrastructure. It wasn't easy to have POSs that were not connected online real time to the card you were using. So I wouldn't really say, I think it was a good run. I wouldn't say it was successful as such for the country, but it was something that we had and we knew, it was something we would be able to do in the future. So I remember us going to a bank in South Africa to learn how they issue their cards and how they run the ATMs, how they run POSs. We spent about a week there just learning. And after that, we thought, well, everything we've learned here, we really can't do that with Value Card. So the best thing for us to do is to see how we can get these banks to allow us to issue on the back of their cards.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at that time, Nigeria didn't really have a good reputation.
Yes.
We also didn't have the history of issuing cards. And to the outside world, it was as if, what, Nigeria going to do cards there? Oh, fraud, blah, blah, blah. You know, they went on and on about that. So we were not, I mean, they weren't really receptive to the suggestion we gave. And when I think about it, you know, sometimes I laugh about it, that was 2001, 2002. And today, I'm sure the same banks will issue far more than they do in the country.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Today. So, and that was that. And then we started, and then I was out a bit of, I went out a bit of cards for a couple of years. And then I got back, and then there was this thing about a company called Interswitch. So they had just started. And banks had invested, some banks had invested in that. And they wanted to start doing online real-time cards, Max Stripe. And so we started. There were companies who brought in cards with chip already embedded, and then they would issue the cards to us and then would send them out to customers. Then you had to have an account with the bank. And so one of the things that we did was that we felt if we were to ask people if they wanted the cards, I mean, Nigerians generally, you know, don't like changes. So they would say no. Yeah. And so we insisted that once you had an account with GTBank, you must have a card. And the way to have access to your account is not to come to the banking hall, but is to have a card. And so we started that. Of course, I mean, we faced resistance and stuff like that. People saying, I didn't ask for the card, I didn't do this, but we issued the cards. We weren't charging at the beginning, so we issued the cards. And slowly, they got used to it. We got ATMs. Banks started, you know, installing ATMs in their locations, and then some outside the location. And then people started using the cards reluctantly, but they were. And then we progressed like that. We really had to force. We had to force people to use it.
Wow.
We had to push it down the throat of the people we had to push. So we created a new account opening form where to get a card was pre-taped. So it meant that you must have a card. So to bank with GTBank, you must have a card. So that's how we started. So everybody had their cards. And then we progressed to making sure that customers used the ATM. So we started that policy of if you were going to withdraw 40,000 and below, you must use the ATM. If you didn't use the ATM, you would pay some money. I think we started with 60 Naira. But of course, again, people resisted that. Oh, it's my money, I should be able to. But even the people in the bank resisted. But we continued. And then before we knew it, what we found was that a lot of people were actually withdrawing. They found that it was easier rather than coming to the banking halls, you know, to wait for 30 minutes, an hour to withdraw. You could just go to the ATM and get your money out. So they started that. So we kind of won that war, you know. We got people to go to ATMs. Other banks followed as well. People were going to ATMs. Now we have the point of sale. So people were still going to the ATMs to withdraw large amounts of money. So we needed point of sale terminals to work. So that battle started again. So we had to get retailers to even buy into the idea of using the point of sale. A lot of people said, oh, it's not going to work. We don't have infrastructure. We don't have NEPA. We don't have this. But we felt that we must start from somewhere.
Yes.
You know, so we started the point of sale, promoting that as well. To sell that idea to even retailers was a big task. A lot of them didn't want. Of course, we couldn't charge them. Of course, we couldn't sell the point of sale terminals to them. We had to give them, to dash them.
Yes.
And I'm sure you remember as well,
Yes,
because
I
we were
remember.
together. And then giving them to use was also a problem. So you'd get there, let's say customers even decided that, okay, we would like to use this to pay in the restaurant or to pay in shops. And then you'd get there and they'll tell you, oh, the POS is not working. I say, where is it? I can't see it. And then they'll bring this dusty equipment from under, I don't know, from somewhere really dusty. And then we would insist that, clean it
Power
up.
it on.
Can you go and charge it? They will plug. They say they don't know how to use it. And then we'd say, we can use it. So people were going out to make sure that those POSs, and some of them would say, come and carry your equipment. I don't even want, and things like that. But we continued. We continued. I would say that the game changer must have been the game
Yes.
and ShopRite.
Yes.
They bought into it.
Yes.
They were coming from South Africa.
Yes. Then they were used to it.
And they were used to it. So they brought it out. They got into the idea. So people were using that. Of course, there were failures. There were times that, the POS wouldn't work. And then the retailer or the restaurant would say, no, we don't want it anymore. People would eat and not pay and things like that. But I remember I used to go to restaurants with my children and my husband, and they would say the POS is not working. And I'd say, no, bring it out. And they would go, Mom, you started again. Okay, here we go. And then we'd sit there, we'll bring the POS out, and then we'll make sure it worked. But I really don't know when everything changed, that it became a situation where if you didn't have a POS, you couldn't sell.
Yes.
We sold it.
Mm-hmm.
We sold it out there.
Mm-hmm.
We had to also get customers not to call the card ATM card. I don't know if you can.
Yes, it's not an
now
ATM card.
It's not an ATM card. Even the people you were working with
we're calling it
ATM
card.
And we're saying, no, it's a debit card. It's a debit card because we wanted them to be able to use at
the POS.
POS locations as well. Today, they still call it ATM cards, but it doesn't matter because they know where they use it. They use them online. They use them.
But then it was a lot of, I remember when you would have to keep writing memos. It is not an ATM card. MPR, it is not an ATM card everywhere.
I know, we just had to do that. But when I look at where we are today, it's amazing.
It is.
It's amazing. And I also think that the fact that we didn't allow lack of infrastructure to prevent us from moving forward.
Yeah.
We didn't allow lack of electricity. We didn't allow lack of, even though we did have, we had the mobile phones, but, we know what it was like, that they weren't really working appropriately, not to talk of actually using it for data.
Yes.
The telcos would rather use to make calls than for you to use for data. So we faced those challenges as well. But I think as time went on, banks bought into it and,
and it kicked off.
It kicked off.
And what you're saying is really important because today we see banks and even the industry try things and they say, oh, it didn't work. So like QR, oh, we tried it didn't work. Contactless, oh, we're not even sure if it will work. And so you have Ghana and a lot of countries in Africa embracing contactless. Nigeria hasn't gotten it right. But what you're saying is, value card, we tried until we saw that we needed something better.
Yes.
POSs, everybody said it will not work. Yet here we are.
Exactly.
We persevered. So do you think where we are now is a situation of how do I put it? I'm trying to find the right words. Could it be that people are now more risk averse, or we are simply throwing up our hands in the air that, oh, we tried it didn't work? Could it be that there's a perseverance lacking?
I think that is part of it, definitely. But all the cards, most cards now are contactless.
All the cards are contactless.
I think the problem is the point of sale terminals, which they have not changed to be contactless. So I think obviously because of the exchange rate, because of everything, banks are reluctant to invest more. I guess maybe fintechs are also reluctant to, start investing again in new point of sale terminals. I also feel, they feel that with contactless abroad, it was like the minimum or the maximum you could spend at that time was possibly £30.
Yeah.
And then maybe now move to like £100. What level, what is the maximum that we can allow? Even if you decide to allow 20,000 naira, do you know if they would go 10 times or 20 times in a day to spend? I think generally
So there's that risk.
there's that risk that banks are reluctant to face. And the fintechs that are focusing on that side now, I think they're also reluctant to spend so much money on that. It's like what we have is working, so why move? They probably feel, what are we gaining for contactless?
Yes.
What is the extra additional value that we're going to gain? Today, I want to spend my money, I'm able to spend it. So why introduce something that can introduce fraud? Why introduce something that can make me losses? I think that's probably what they're looking at. And there is a lot of improvement in the infrastructure we have. You hardly go anywhere now where the point of sale terminal is not working.
Yes.
And also thanks to CBN, who has made sure that banks have been made to be responsible for what they do. The switching companies too.
Yes.
So they are accountable. So what you have is that you don't really have the situation where the point of sale terminals are not working. I know, I mean, people would say, well, if that happens in Lagos, what about outside Lagos? What about other places where you still need? But because of the introduction of agent banking, that again has been solved.
Sure.
With agent banking, you would need infrastructure to do it, and they do have. I mean, there's nowhere you go to now. You go to my hometown in Ronke Mesele in Ekiti. They have POSs. Oh yeah, there are POSs, not necessarily to buy biscuits, but to change money.
True.
So I think that
have become
the agents and the super agents have done a lot as well in bringing about the effectiveness of point of sale terminals. So I think, kudos to them as well for that. So I think it's because there's just no added value right now. That's probably why you don't see a reason to invest in such. However, you can use your card. Well, when we could use our cards abroad, we could use contactless. So the cards have contactless. It's just the point of sale infrastructure left.
I'm glad you mentioned when we could use our Naira cards abroad. Because, and that dovetails into where I want to, where would like you to zone on the story around when Naira first traveled abroad via the Naira Mastercard. I mean, it was as if everybody won the lottery at the time. But a lot of people don't know what happened behind the scenes. And even we then, were in the middle of it, but we didn't really know what you went through and what it took you to get us to get the industry to where we were, and other banks now started to issue those Naira cards that could now be used abroad. Can you share a bit of that?
I think, for me, in my entire career, the most successful thing that I would say I've ever been part of is the issuance of Naira Mastercard. And to be the first to work with the bank, the first bank that did it, GTBank, and to be part of that team that did it, or to be the one also driving it, is the most successful thing I think I've ever done in my career. So I'll tell you why. It was a bit shameful when we used to go abroad. We used to go, Mastercard, we used to go for seminars and things like that in other countries. I mean, it was just me. My other bankers as well who would go in charge of ePayment. And what we had was just dollar cards. The entire country probably had maximum 100,000 dollar cards. And we were going to places where people had issued millions of cards. And we couldn't tell them that what we were issuing were dollar cards. It was just, you just couldn't. Because Nigeria was supposed to be big. Nigeria is big, the giant of Africa. There was no way we were going to tell them that the only cards we issued that we could use were abroad were dollar cards. Of course, we had the internal cards. So I remember attending something in Zanzibar. I was there with Wumi Ogumbi, Chuma, and some of us. And of course, there was this bank in Mauritius, and they were going on about, they've hit their first 1 million cards. And everybody was clapping, and Mastercard was clapping, and we were just looking at each other like, oh God. I mean, at that time, with the InterSwitch cards, that's what we used to call the cards then. Those ones, we had way more than 1 million, but they were not used abroad. I mean, who were you? So for us, we couldn't say anything, but we were thinking that you just wait. You wait for another year or two and think of where we would be. Even Mastercard. Okay, so Mastercard came, Visa was there. Mastercard was advising us that, so we're migrating to chip and pay. That was how it happened. So, and we were supposed to migrate because what we had was Magstra. So we heard that chip and pay was the one that you would have to put your PIN. And of course, I knew about chip and pay because that's what they were using abroad at the time. But how were we going to start? And then we were all sort of looking at each other because we didn't know how to start. Don't forget, at that time, there was no committee of e-business industry heads.
Yeah.
It was just us. It was just some of us who were friends and we shared the same interests.
Yes.
And we happened to be working in different banks. So, of course, we would call each other, and call Chuma or call Wumi or call late Uche, God bless her soul, that what are we going to do? You know, we're supposed to do this within a matter of 3 months. And so we came together and formed this committee of e-banking industry.
So that was how CB was born.
That was how CB was born.
Interesting.
Omokende was still with us at
Yes.
the time. And of course, Mastercard saw that as an opportunity to come in and help us. So they came in and they got us the charter of other countries and what they were doing in other successful places for us to look at. And so we started that. And of course, I was the first founding chairman of CB at the time. And then we started to understand what chip and pin was all about. We were also working with CBN. There was a committee that CBN had set up, and they put some of us from the banking industry and also their own staff to look at what can happen. So CBN has always, they've always been involved.
Yeah.
So they didn't just start being involved, they've always been involved. They've always carried, we've always worked with them as partners. And so we started the chip and pay. So at the beginning, Verve was the only chip and pay. And we were told that that was the card we would issue. So other banks started issuing chip and pay, Verve chip and pay. And some issued, I think, Visa chip and pay. I'm not quite sure. I think no Naira chip and pay, Verve Naira. And so we looked at it so what's the difference? We're going to spend this amount of money to move to chip and pay. At that time, I think we had about 3.5 million customers, and we were going to reissue all the cards to the chip and pin of a local scheme card or local scheme. And so, and Mastercard said something about, you could do this. You can issue a Naira Mastercard and say, so we could use abroad. I said, how? It's not up to you whether we can use it abroad or not. It's up to CBN. Naira was not a convertible currency. It used to be ages ago. I'm sure you wouldn't know about that time, but I knew when I was in England doing my A-levels. It used to be, we used to take Naira and exchange Naira in banks. But Naira stopped being convertible, so it was going to be difficult. And so we now started working on it. And we thought it was going to be very expensive as well. And Mastercard was going to try and say, no, it's not going to be expensive. I was a guy called Jason. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, I remember Jason.
Okay, so he said, look, we can do this. Let's start. So we started. And of course, the rest felt that, what are we doing? We should be issuing the latest, what everybody's doing. But we felt no. So we started working behind the scene and nobody knew what we were doing. Not even, like you said, you probably would know because you were in that.
Yes.
But a lot of people outside didn't know. All we knew was that they were complaining. And fortunately for us, we would manage to get CBN to extend the time as in the committee of e-banking industry head at the time. So, and that was it. We worked and nobody knew what we were doing. So we got CBN to approve that we issue a Naira Mastercard or a Naira card that could be used abroad. And at that time, they gave us a maximum of $40,000. It was like gold, you're right. I mean, $40,000 can be spent in a year on each card. And we started.
This was 2008.
So I think 2008, we started. And the day we issued it and we launched it, the other banks didn't know, and they didn't know what hit them. It was like, what? How did they achieve this? How? And of course, I remember that day, it was the best day of my life. I went to meet my boss and I said, we did it. We did it. We did, and there's a lot of tears and
There was a
everything.
lot.
Then it was a lot because, we were in the same team and so many times we
But you
worked
never
closely with
showed it,
technology.
but we knew you were stressed.
Yes.
But you never showed.
We were working with technology. I must mention Wale Williams.
Yes.
I was mentioned, Dari.
Sorry.
I must also mention our Sunday Oladeji,
Yes.
Omokende, everybody, late Bolale as well. We all worked to make sure, this happened. And fortunately, we launched it. And that was in fact, that was a turning point even for Guarantee Trust in terms of the number of customers they had. Customers just started opening accounts. Customers, bankers from other banks were opening accounts with GTBank because they could get a card and they could spend abroad. And the rest is history. Really, that for me is the best period of my career. And that would say till today, it doesn't matter what else I've done. It's the greatest achievement in my career.
And it was so instrumental because it changed payments as we knew it.
Yeah.
So it was not everybody could now do an international transaction.
Yes.
Before, because even to get those dollar cards before, those were the city of...
Those were, you couldn't get the dollar card. You would have to put money aside, put dollar aside, put this, obviously you had to go to the black market to buy the dollar.
Exactly.
This was a card that you could spend and the rate was at the normal CBN.
It was normal CBN rates. And it just exploded.
It exploded. And what happened? Mastercard made Nigeria the hub.
Oh, yes.
They didn't make Nigeria the hub before Nigeria became the hub, the center.
You had an award that was given.
Oh yeah, we had, of course we got an award. We also got they also put Mastercard, GTBank on the advisory board of Mastercard.
Yeah.
And that was received by the late Tayo of the Rewa at the time. Yeah. And that was before, of course, we had gone for 6-8 months before any bank even caught up with us or started there.
Yes.
I would say.
And by then you milked all your customers. I remember before then, you always say something, and I think it's important we say here because of how I've seen e-business become. You always said e-business should be a profit center.
Yeah.
You should follow the money. You were always, my P&L must add up. I don't care what the costs are. My costs must make sense vis-a-vis my profits. And so even going to advocate to CBN for the price of cards, the maintenance fee, remember all those things, it was to ensure that the economics of card business or the payment business made sense.
Yes.
So now when I see and hear a lot of people say, oh, there's no money in cards, or there's no money in e-business, I ask myself, is it that we're not thinking and innovating enough, or has the industry changed so much that things are now no longer making sense? And so the math is not adding up. What are your thoughts on it from where you sit, from the lens?
What I would say is the minute Naira card was no longer used abroad, it stopped making sense to issue Naira cards that could work abroad. That's number one. Some of the things, Bonnies, that you made from cards, when a customer uses a card abroad, you get paid.
Yes.
You use the card on a POS.
Yes.
You get paid as the bank, as a card issuer.
Yes.
You get paid. When you have POSs out there, you get paid as well. I think the minute, and then of course, the Naira, the pricing was controlled in Nigeria. The pricing, so we weren't making our money from the pricing in Nigeria because we limited it to 1.25% at that time. Because if we didn't do it, nobody was going to, we wouldn't have been able to break into the market.
Sure.
But other clients, they were charging 3-4%.
Yes.
So which means that every time, as the card issuer, every time a customer uses your card, you're getting like 3%
as interchange.
In FX, interchange fee. So that is no longer there. So the banks can't see the money that is there. Then in terms of even selling the cards cost money. Even worse now with the exchange rate.
Yes.
At that time, the exchange rate was good. And cards usually, they cost money. So what was happening at the time was you could charge 1,000 Naira for a card that will be valid for 3 years. I remember, I will never forget, Some people came to the bank and they went to report us to the consumer protection body or something, and they came. I wasn't there, but Omokende was there, and she had to make a presentation. I was away, so we had to work on the presentation that was going to be made. So we worked on it, and Omokende made a brilliant presentation to them and some of the members that came, and they actually came there to tell us to stop charging for cards. And so by the time she finished the presentation and the benefits and everything, the people there asked, can I open an account and get the card? Because honestly, we were charging 1,000 Naira for a card that would work for 3
years.
That enabled you to spend money abroad. So obviously, other banks followed. It just didn't make sense not to charge. So I think that at that time, when we started, in fairness to the bank, we were not a profit making.
Yes, then. Yes.
We weren't a profit center. And it had to happen because you needed to introduce it, stabilize, and then. So we were given a year. And I remember that before 1 year, we started making profit. So I think it's just more difficult now. The exchange rate, also regulations by CBN. I'm glad they've kind of gone back a bit on not being able to charge customers when other customers use your ATM.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, at that time, it was just getting ridiculous. So banks stopped putting money in their ATMs. So now that it's been changed, maybe things are getting better. They completely abdicated their responsibility of making sure that
to the
POS people. And that was kind of understandable because you pay a lot of money to install a POS, an ATM, and what happens? Some banks would sit there without a single ATM and their customers can use yours. So obviously that makes sense. Having said that, I think people should still think outside of the box. It is not possible for ePayment not to make money. We now have banks who now have separate ePayments and they are making money.
Yeah.
So they're doing other things.
Yes.
But I don't think we should abandon cards. I hear people say, oh, cards are no longer, we shouldn't really be using cards anymore. We should be paying that. You cannot stop using cards.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yes, you can do other things. We know that, our children of these days, they use their telephone to pay and things, but you still need cards.
Absolutely.
When your battery dies, that's what I tell my sons. When your battery dies on your phone, what do you need? You still go back to
your card.
So I still think that cards will continue to reign. I mean, in other countries, they're still using cards. So, and the payments that we also continued to do in GTBank was not limited to just cards. Fortunately for the bank, I was moved from cards to operations. And of course, the first thing I was going to do was to make sure that e-payments were promoted in the banking halls.
Yes.
And so transfers catapulted because we now gave targets for people in the banking halls to make sure if somebody comes into the banking hall and they've come to transfer with a form, you'd have to make sure they fill a form and you enroll them so they become a mobile banking operator or a mobile banking user or internet banking user. I mean, now we're seeing the results out there. We're also seeing all the people that were not financially included before, they are now included. That again takes me to...
Which is your work at SANEF.
Which is my work at SANEF. So I think somehow, without me knowing it, that's just the plan that God possibly had for me to go into banking, and then towards like the end, go into things that would change the face of banking in Nigeria. And that's what I have been lucky to have been involved in.
So with SANEF, and I know you were involved in creating that framework for agency banking as we know it today, because a lot of people just thought agency banking just sprang up, or they like agency by money points. But I remember, once where we met and you had just started in SANEF, then you were like, I need to sanitize this thing. And I was like, yes, the reciprocal has happened.
Yes, we needed to sanitize it.
And so now agency banking has, taken a life of its own. Do you think we've done a good job as an ecosystem in financial inclusion through SANEF? I mean, you talked about the village in Ekiti and all. Do you think we've done a good job, or is there more to be done? Because I ask this because a lot of the fintechs that come in these days, it's like we're coming to the same pool of customers, innovating the same products. Have you seen fintechs who have been focused on, that financial inclusion? And do you think that we're leveraging it enough? Or do you think perhaps they don't want to be included? Because Deji, when we spoke to him, he said, do they even want to be included?
I think they want to be included. I think that even if at the beginning they didn't understand what you were talking about, in terms of financial inclusion, and some of them probably felt, how much do I have? Why do I need to bank? But don't forget, the story of financial inclusion didn't start with SANEF, and it didn't even start with agent banking. I think it started from the time banks, like, for example, GTBank decided, to our horror at the time, when Segun Agbaje decided we were going to open our doors and we were not going to have a minimum balance. I think that's the story started from there. And we were there then, and I had just been moved to operations to head the transaction services of the bank, the banking halls. And it was like a disaster. How could you say that? But he stuck to his gun. And so what he said is that, yes, he didn't want the banking halls to be clogged up. But what he wanted was for us to think of a way that we were going to serve them, and which was also, ePayment as well. In a way, we didn't talk about, it wasn't the buzzword to use financial inclusion, but that's basically what he had done.
True.
Because people who had seen GTBank as a place where they couldn't go to, a place where they didn't think they could bank, they went in there. They didn't have to have any money.
Yes.
They just opened their account. And then we started.
I think the only thing you had to have was 1,000 Naira.
1,000 Naira.
That was it.
For your card when we started. And guess what? Good thing you mentioned the card. The card was a status symbol.
Yes.
It's like, if I have that orange card, then I bank with GTBank. So that helped. So everything together. I mean, you didn't have to wait to have a passbook or whatever. You had a card. So 1,000 Naira to just cover the cost of the card was enough, even if I didn't have any money in there.
Yeah.
Just that was enough. And so that was a form of financial inclusion that started. Now, going back to when we started in 2019 was when we really started. 2019 started, putting things together in 2018. 2019 January was when it started. The banks had come together. It was the first time that banks would really formally come together. That let's have a shared agent network expansion facilities. They knew that it wasn't serving the customers, such customers, wasn't profitable for them. And they knew that the only way was for them to come together. So they came together and set up SANEF. And they had been told also by CBN and that, guys, you're not working on financial inclusion. If you don't do something, then we're going to have to take a different decision. And they didn't want that. And so they decided to go all out for it. So at the time we started, we had like 80,000, 83,000 agents. And we had super agents as well. The super agents that CBN had been dealing with and banks had been dealing with, there were about 10, 11 at the time. And so they came in and they were going to start. And one of the things that they were given facilities by CBN, then to go out there and then onboard at least 50 agents each to come in. So which is 50,000 agents to come in. And that's how it all started. And so we came in, and when you met me and I was saying we needed to sanitize, was that some of the 80-something thousand didn't even have addresses. They didn't exist. They were just names. So we had to do that. And by the time we had spent 5-6 years, we were close to about 2 million agents. Now, we didn't do it on our own. We did with the help of the super agents. Super agents are the fintechs and the fintechs. So that takes me to the fintechs. I strongly believe that without the super agents and the mobile money operators, who today are like to be regarded as fintechs, without them, we wouldn't have achieved what we achieved today. Without also central bank and the banks allowing it to happen, we shouldn't. So it's a real collective effort. And what we came in to do as SANEF was to encourage collaboration, not competition. Just let's collaborate. So we obviously gave ourselves target. as to the number of agents we must have. Because what we were told was that we must have 500,000 agents by 2020 December, which we had 560 by that time. So we kept on moving, and there was no stopping us. I would say, and then of course, agency banking took a life of its own.
Yeah.
And the agents just went. And then obviously the cash trap, the cash crunch that happened in, was it 2022?
2022 into 2023.
That really catapulted, I would say, the MMOs and the fintechs. The banks, all of a sudden, people would say, oh, this wasn't working, internet banking wasn't working. But the truth of the matter is that there is nowhere on earth where all of a sudden you say that no more cash on this day. So all of you will now have to rely on internet banking on the same infrastructure that the banks had only in October. Honestly, they ought to have been given a year at least that, look, go and do something to your system such that you'd be able to take that. So of course they couldn't cope. And then the smaller parties, the fintechs, I don't want to name names, and they took advantage.
Oh yes, they did.
And so the groundnut seller, knowing that there was no cash to buy groundnut, and she needed to continue to sell that groundnut, had to do transfer. And to do transfer, had to open account, not with a bank that will be asking for an arm and a leg. They just opened online with somebody, with the Fintechs who were not asking for anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that really, again, without wanting to do it or without knowing, that also increased financial inclusion.
Sure.
Does that period of cash crunch.
Sure.
And I think we're in a good place. I think the ePayment system. They're in a good place in Nigeria. And I think even if you compare to what is obtainable abroad today, we're doing very well.
Oh yeah.
Banking is one aspect that has not relied, exactly, we got it right. We didn't rely on government, we didn't rely on anyone. They just went in there and they did what needed to be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, this was a lovely history lesson. So just before we go, if you are to go back, I mean, you've left us in the corporate world. You've been there, done that, you've gotten your stripes. If you were to stand with your 27-year-old in an elevator, what is that thing you would, knowing what you know now, would say?
You mean a 27-year-old trying to work in the payment industry, or just
your 27-year-old self, or a 27-year-old person trying to get into the payment industry?
I would say, just don't listen. Just do what you need to do. Just do what you need to do, because for us to be able to get to where we got today in this country, I can hear the generator still buzzing. Nothing has changed from when I came to this country in 1990 and now. Absolutely nothing. But we did it, in spite of that. And I know that this will continue to happen. Even when we started the agent banking, we thought, we're not going to be able to get to 500,000, not to mention 2 million we are today, but we did it. Nigerians are very resilient, and they're willing to do anything. They're willing to work. They're willing to achieve what they need to achieve. Just show them the way. And so what I'll tell anyone, just keep at it. I have always been involved in new things. Yes, when I started banking, when I came to Nigeria, I worked my first was foreign operations, first job. Started the export desk. So I've always been involved in new things, starting new things. And when I start, it's like, how am I going to do it? It just happens. I think it's people like you that tell me that it is what you put in that has made it successful. I just don't know. I just look at it and I think, how am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to do it? But it just happens, and I look back. So the other day when my staff were having a send-off due for me, and they were talking about my history and what I'd done. And like I was telling you at the beginning, I said, I probably had forgotten. And I thought, oh, really? I did all of this, and it's just what you've forgotten. And I read something about somebody who told me that first time they went to England, they went to look for NatWest.
NatWest, yes. We all had to look for NatWest.
That I go somewhere and I look and I'm thinking, oh, why can't we do this? And so I was there when they started using PIN pads in England. Naturalist was the first bank that I know who did it. I guess at least that's the bank I was banking with. And so every time you have to use that. And I thought,
Why can't
we have a problem in the bank. The place is, the only way we could do this is to get people not to even write checks, not to do anything. It's just to slot their card in, put their PIN, and they're able to draw money. They don't even have to give their account number. The teller can see the account number and give you money, and you don't have to sign. And it was going to take, I remember, they said everything was going to take less than a minute to do. And we're like, what? And so we decided, again,
we
person
must
I was
do
reporting
this.
was, we must do this. And we started. And I'm happy to see that today it's still in GTBank, in all the branches. They're using it today. And I haven't seen any other bank, funny enough, and I don't think it's that difficult. But I guess maybe they don't think they have a problem to solve. I guess GTBank felt it did. And we're talking of, I left in 2014, and even before then I'd left ePayment. So we're talking PIN pad have been around since and still around. Yeah. So I tell anyone to just, a younger self should just continue. You will get there.
And I like what you said, don't listen. Because I remember there were many things that if you had listened to people who were knowledgeable, people who knew better, quote unquote, you wouldn't have done, you wouldn't have led a lot of the things. And I think that also helped us because we knew that, okay, we could dream. We had you, we had Shegun, we could do this, we could do that. And that is what has led to a lot of innovation we see today. And so I think going from here, and people are innovating, but we also see a lot of, should we not? It may not work. And I go back to contactless again. I dare say that if it was you up then, or people like you then who were at the forefront, you would ask CBN, okay, let's start with 5,000. Okay, let's start with 7,500.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, let's open a small segment. Let's see if it will work.
I'm not even sure that it's CBN saying they shouldn't do it.
I think CBN has given their approval. So what I'm saying is you would have had to challenge the status quo to say, what are we really afraid of? Because remember when we introduced POSs, the merchants were afraid.
They were.
That I would rather hold my card than put it in this machine, my cash rather,
My cash,
than
yes,
put it
I
in
know.
this machine. I don't trust you people. What if the money does not get into my bank account?
I know, so many things they used to say back then.
And it was worse then than it is now. Yeah. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And as Ronke said, don't listen. Let's do this thing where we're growing and we've grown a lot, but there's still a lot we can do.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I see people, young people being very innovative and very...
They are.
Whilst I would say don't listen, but at the same time, I have seen people towards the tail end of my career. I've seen young people, young fintechs, they get money from abroad, they do this, and then they don't know the difference between their income and their revenue. They don't know the difference between that and the profit. And they just don't look. They just go in. But you also still need to look, like you said.
Yeah.
It has to make sense.
It has to make sense.
Anything that's a simple person like me cannot understand, then it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It has to make sense.
Simple.
So you just don't dive in at the same time, but it has to make sense. It has to be simple. I mean, that's what I remember Shegun used to say. I am not daft. I am not stupid. But if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm a simple guy, but it must make sense to me. So I think everything should make sense.
Thank you so much. But this has been beautiful. Any last words for us as we close?
This is a wonderful thing you're doing. And like you said, I always say it, we say amongst some of us, we say, who's going to tell our story? Who's going to tell the story of, I hear people say, oh, cashless. We started it when we're doing cashless. Sorry, cashless. The drive for cashless started way before. I also told you now that financial inclusion did not start with SANEF.
Yes.
It started the time Shegun Agbaje opened the doors of
for everybody.
GTBank for everyone to come in. But, people don't remember that. They just remember people who make noise all the time.
True.
We did this. It's good. I must give credit to CB. We are, all of us that started, we are on their advisory board. So they made sure that the story is still told. A lot of them had not even started banking when we started. They didn't know the story, but they went ahead to look for the story. But again, it must be documented. Just because the president or the chairman recognizes the work we've done now doesn't mean the next chairman
will do.
And so it has to be documented. And thank you very much for doing this, and well done.
Thank you.
And well done as well. You've done a lot in the card industry as well, from the little Nkebet that started with us in GTBank, then to, becoming vice president, or everything. And I know that, good luck in what you're doing, and you shall be successful. And it's a new thing in the market.
Yes.
And well done.
Thank you. You see, it's not easy speaking to your boss. She's going to be my boss any day. And I, like I said when we started, I deeply respect her. And I'm sure after this talk, you have also looked at her with a different lens. So thank you so much for allowing us come to your screens. Until we come again with the next episode, have a lovely day. Bye.